Brian Brown, we're going to talk
Yes,
about something that most people don't talk about out loud. Anxiety.
yes. This is one of my faves
Okay, good. Why is it your fave?
because I don't. I think it's really complicated, and people have, I think, m- and probably justifiably, a more negative view on anxiety.
Hmm.
And I believe that anxiety can be a very good thing. And many a book and article written about how we've kind of evolved to leverage anxiety to be more effective in life. Um, Keeping ourselves alive and not being eaten by woolly mammoths. Wait, Siberian tiger? Wait, what's the saber-tooth tiger? That's what I was going for.
That's
Uh,
kind of
something to do
terrifying.
with survival anxiety, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and too much of anything can be overwhelming. And so I think that there's a balance, but I love the topic.
Yeah. Our chief people officer, Kathy Myers at Community Financial, talks about this idea that there is a important amount of performance anxiety at work that matters. And sometimes when she says that, I know people are wondering, why would you want any team member to be anxious? That's bad. So I think what you're pointing to in terms of how we think about anxiety as a really negative feeling is important.
It is, yeah. And again, there's like when I said a lot of books about the topic, I mean there's books about not worrying and there's books about worrying and there's books about why worrying is good and why, you know, it can be too much. So it's a massive topic. But I do think that anxiety at work helps us identify things that might be risky. And so being in the HR field,
Mhm.
um, I just am constantly anxious about what could possibly go wrong. Um, and over time, I've kind of learned to kind of live with an amount of anxiety or figure out kind of the right balance of that by being I'm not inherently a structured person, as you might be aware of, but I do believe that creating structure can help alleviate anxiety in ways that, in areas where there shouldn't be. So if you can create some structure and organization for, you know, the areas that you can kind of control, you can, I think, better manage the stuff that you just know you can't control, which are people, right? Like, and so again, in the HR field, that's kind of our jam, and we, do our best to implement and put things in place that help create a better culture and higher engagement, and hopefully reduce conflict. And then, that kind of conflict kind of results in anxiety because that's oftentimes we are working through difficult situations and conflict. And so balancing all of that is challenging.
I'd be interested in your perspective about knowing when anxiety is appropriate and is helping in the ways that you've talked about, and then when it has gone too far. What would be the signals you'd be looking for?
I think I would want to ensure that I have a close relationship with my coworkers and invite conversation around my own kind of like how I'm supporting and how we're interacting with one another. I'm so thankful to have great coworkers that I've worked with for a long time who will tell me how it is, So if I'm kind of not in a great spot or if I'm not thinking about things the right way, I can kind of read them. And I think having some awareness of um, what their kind of body language or direct, in some cases, direct verbiage to me back helps me understand that. So that would be like I think it takes work to establish trust to understand, is there a tell? Are there people around you that can tell you that like maybe you're acting in a way that isn't, um, you're not acting in your best way? I wish I could tell people that I like woke up every day and I meditated and I was grounded and I, could very easily just close the door and like you know, light sage and hit the bell thing and walk around. And, I'm not that way.
Mm,
I've I feel when I'm very, very anxious, just a lack of clarity in
mm,
what I'm doing. And so I notice that like I'm stuck. So if you have that sensation of like writer's block, that's the
mm,
best comparison. Like I'm trying to think through something complicated and I just feel very stuck. And then I also recognize with myself 5 minutes or going to exercise or just getting away from like moving on to a different problem can often alleviate the anxiety. Sometimes it takes longer, but yeah, that's how I kind of monitor and identify where it becomes too much. Yeah. I worry when I work with people and they don't have enough anxiety.
oh,
Like because we're credit unions and while we've been around for a really long time, that's no guarantee that we're going to be around for a long time. So I mean, we need anxiety and urgency around what we're doing here. And if we don't have that and we're complacent, that's, if we have people in our company or on our team that don't, that aren't worried in the same way that I am about our survival and competitiveness in, the next 10 to 15 years, I get really anxious about that. So,
yeah, yeah.
finding those that worry at the same level as you. I mean, am I off base there?
No, I love that. And for me, as you know, my concern about the future is something that drives me. I think it drives the operational tempo of this organization. And I agree with you that we do need to be concerned about relevance. I think we need to be concerned about urgency. I'll soapbox for a minute that, when you consider the financial pain that I believe Americans are in, and we've heard very loudly they are, and your organization, and in our movement's case, organizations, credit unions are so well equipped to solve that challenge. And yet we have, by any measure, less than 10% of the market share. We should be anxious about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I am
Yeah.
very anxious about that.
Yeah. I'm anxious about that. I'm anxious about, this. I just saw in Denver that a bank was named like the best customer service. We have this old perception that credit unions, oh, well, we serve people better. That's not necessarily true, if at all. Like, I think we want to serve people better, but we have a lot of reasons to be anxious. And so even like on our team within, the, training space, for example, like, being really anxious about how long it takes to train someone and get them up to speed so they can serve our members. I have a lot of anxiety around turnover in certain areas, and so for me, it's more concerning when there's a lack of urgency and anxiety around some of these key areas.
How do you think about right sizing that for yourself and the people around you? I mean, I heard you talking a little bit about, this idea that you can have a bit of a pulse check and a temperature check with colleagues that you really trust. I think you and I are both driven in a way to use anxiety as a motivator. And then there's another side of that where you spend a weekend, as I did, spinning in circles, which was not at all healthy or helpful. What's the
Yeah,
balance?
I think it's asking yourself, is this something that I can impact and control?
Hmm.
And are there other things that I could be working on right now that I can control and impact? And so the stock market, that's been really fun lately. And I'm not typically one to watch it or worry about it, but I found myself doing that this week.
Oh,
Uh, More than I mean, it's been historic. Like
yep.
the ups and downs are, I
Mhm.
mean, talk about anxiety. I mean, we could pick 48 other topics right now,
Yes.
right? But that one is I feel like, well, I was gonna say I feel like it's apolitical, but nothing is. But
Yeah.
it's with the markets going up and down. I'm like, well, I can't. control that,
Yeah.
but I certainly can control maybe how much I'm spending, or you know, I can flip the switch and go back to my massive to-do list of things that I haven't gotten done yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think focusing on around that, but I think just asking yourself the question, like, is the thing I'm worried about something that I can really change?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, then, find something else to worry about that you can change.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you say. I often give that advice to my daughter, Mackenzie, which she worries like her mother does. And I'm very sorry, Mackenzie, for passing that along. And I'm great at advice that I don't take. I also just want to
I
say.
hear you. Yeah, me too.
And I often say, Mackenzie, if we're thinking about something particularly that is in the rear view mirror, which is something she does a lot of, is okay, well, what did you do in preparation for that thing, right? If it was a
Hmm.
basketball game, did you do everything you could to be prepared? Did you get enough sleep? Did you practice? Did you participate? Did you show up with a great attitude? Okay, if the answer to all those things is yes, okay, what might you have done differently? And let's talk about that. And then for the next time, what are one or two things that you would do to take away from what you learned? And then you got to squash it and walk over it and not think about it again.
You would be such an exceptional like track and field or basketball coach. I'm like, come on, that's great.
Well, I think a lot about this because I think so what we've talked about is how anxiety can be performance creating. It can also be performance reducing. And I think in Mackenzie's case, as it relates to athletics, it often is. And so again, there's this sweet spot of needing some of it and then being able to use it to a certain extent and then let it go.
Yeah, and I like this idea too that like, what did if you mentioned sleep or
Yeah.
diet or whatever, this idea of converting that into some small, easy to control or action steps. So the next time I'm going to do this thing,
Hmm.
right? And it's kind of like when we talk about goals, if you make a goal that's really far out there, cool. I think that can be healthy. But you also need smaller ones along the way to make it feel like you're achieving things. And so, again, anxiety around stock market can't necessarily control that. I feel a lot of relief if I turn around and look at my to-do list and I hammer through a few things that I've been wanting to get done that maybe have caused me a little anxiety. And that often happens. I spend more time thinking about doing something or being anxious about it. Okay, I'm just going to sit down for 10 minutes and get this particular thing done. I'm sure
Hmm.
we've all been there. And it, it just feels really nice, right? You just get this feeling of completion. And so I think there's a relationship between getting some tasks done and that anxiety component.
Yeah. Well, and there's also an interesting intersection of, the idea around what's the number of hours you need before you perfect something or you become master at it?
Oh, I
I
was
don't
just,
know that. I
it's
don't
like
know.
thousands.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I think about that in relation to when I was learning to speak. I was I was so fraught with anxiousness and I was terrible at it. So I had reason to be nervous because I sucked. And as I did it more, the anxiety did not go away. And it doesn't go away completely. And again, I think that's good. People often ask me now, do you get nervous before you speak? And I always say, if I'm not nervous in some way, I don't care enough. And it is in relation to how much I've done it that I know I have more confidence that I'm not going to completely screw it up.
I love that example and I can relate to that. Um, it was like, I don't know, 2018. I got this new boss and she came in and was like, "Hey, we're hosting this conference and I really want you to speak there." And I had never spoken in front of more than like a room, like 10, 15 people, and probably not in that way. And I was so nervous, like I don't think I slept for days leading up to that. Not very well anyway. But because I just never. I was terrified to speak in public. And that was a moment where I was like, okay, well, I have this new boss and I can't let her down. I got to look good, right? I'm trying to grow my career here and I'm going to just do it and suck it up. And I did it and it probably wasn't great. But after that, I felt like I could speak. And I still get really nervous and anxious about it. But to your point, I think, there's a right amount of anxiety that leads to better prep and really thinking through. And you can polish up different parts of public speaking, of course. But after that, I was like, I got this public speaking thing. Cool. Check. So if you have an opportunity to get really nervous and speak in front of people, take it.
Yes,
Get it
dude.
over with.
Yes.
Because I
And it's
promise you,
okay if it's
speaking
not
is
perfect, right? Like
exactly.
it's
Yep.
okay.
It's okay. You'll get better each time. But I love that example because I really think public speaking is one of those that you just have to go and do it. And I'm
And
sure there are those lucky people that are just naturals at it, but I wasn't that way at
no,
all.
it's not either at all. And I will tell you, my best piece of advice is to do the whole thing, sans notes in the mirror.
Yeah,
Because
ditch
I
the notes.
think the idea of notes, and I say this to Mackenzie because she's learning to speak now. Notes were my nemesis because I was so concerned about saying what was on the notes that nobody sees anyway, that I was just focused on that versus what I was intended to talk about. And when you make yourself practice in the mirror, you have to actually do it versus what you think you're going to do. And you see where you're going to stumble.
Yeah, I've practiced out loud. I'm not doing it in front of the mirror. That makes me really anxious to think about. So that's going to be my next thing that I do.
It's worth a
Or
shot.
like when you hear yourself, like
Oh,
your own recording, it's like,
I
oh
hate everything
no,
about that. I hate everything about that. My voice is the worst.
not true. But yes, we no, I don't think anybody likes their own voice.
No. Mm-mm, mm-mm. Okay, so I think what we are taking away from this conversation is anxiety is not bad. So I think anxiety needs new branding, Ryan Brown. I think
Oh
that's
my God, yes, it does.
right.
Yes. I mean, yeah. Hmm. What
I
would
think
that?
that's our homework. How do we
It is.
rebrand anxiety?
Yes.